I looked at the crystal vial. There was blood on it, and I used my thumb to wipe it off as best as I could. Each dose was 3 drops, and there wasn't much of the silver liquid left. I lashed out with my foot and struck the side of Jessie's ruined face. The worthless heap had cost me one precious trip to the past. I would have killed her a second time if it had been possible. I would need more remembrance after just a few more doses. There had to be a way to get more of it that didn't involve going back to the antique store and begging the owner. I knew every dealer in town. One of them had to know how to get their hands on it. I'd ask around later. For now, though, all I wanted to do was go back to the memory I'd experienced. Without bothering to move out of the expanding pool of blood, I used 3 more drops and closed my eyes. There was the whooshing sound and the blackness again, but when it faded, I wasn't back in the hunting blind with my father. Instead, I was sitting in the back seat of a car with a girl about 17 or 18 years old. She was wearing a red dress, and her long hair was pulled back into a braid. The girl's hand was on the thigh of my suit pants and was slowly moving upward. It was the night of my senior prom. The girl was Stacy Keller. She hadn't started off the night as my date, but about halfway through the dance we had ditched the people we had come with and snuck off to my car. I had been carrying a major crush for her since middle school. It turned out that she had felt the same way. It had all come out during a conversation while our dates had been in the bathroom. I closed my eyes as her hand reached the top of my thigh. It wasn't the memory that I had expected the remembrance to take me into, but it was a welcome one. Jesus Christ, I heard myself say. This is the best night of my life. The statement had come out without me intending to make it. It took me a moment to realize that it was because I was reliving a memory. Things were playing out the same way that they originally had. Although it didn't seem that way because everything felt so real, I was just an observer. The girl smiled hungrily and pressed her lips to mine. It was a serious kiss, one that burned with intention. I returned it with just as much excitement and vigor. I was back in the trailer. I immediately let out a scream of frustration. The drug simply wasn't lasting long enough. I needed more. My pants were completely soaked through with blood, so I stood up and stripped them off as I stared at the crystal vial on the floor. Whether it was because the drug wasn't potent enough, or because it wasn't effective on me because of my past use of other narcotics, I wasn't being given enough time to see the memories all the way through. Well, fuck that bitch. Coming to a decision, I scooped up the vial and sat down in the nearby chair, ignoring the body next to it. Nodding to myself, I put 4 drops of the silver liquid on my tongue and listened to the now familiar whooshing noise as things faded to black. I was standing in the trailer with Jessie directly in front of me. My hand was gripped around the handle of the long kitchen knife, and I pushed it into her stomach before cutting open her throat. She fell to the ground, and just as I had earlier, I got on top of her and began to stab her repeatedly. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," a voice said from behind me. I turned my head slightly and saw my father standing a few feet behind me. He placed his hand on my shoulder and squeezed it gently. I felt myself smile. His approval meant everything to me. "Be sure to puncture the lungs," he instructed me. "You don't want it to cry out and alert the other animals." I nodded and did as I was told. Blood bubbled out of Jessie's mouth, but I barely noticed. I was already covered in her red ichor, and a bit more of it didn't matter one way or another. Leaning over her, I watched as she stopped struggling, and the light faded from her eyes. I felt arms wrap around my waist. I didn't need to look to know that Stacy Keller was behind me. I recognized her touch. My face grew warm as I felt her tender embrace. I smiled down at the mangled corpse. The blood and gore smelled intoxicating, and it made the moment even more fulfilling. When my mind returned to the real world, I felt both loved and satisfied. I was the happiest that I had ever been. The feeling didn't last. Within an hour, I began to come down from the emotional and physical high. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. 4 drops had definitely been the way to go, even if it had mixed memories together instead of letting me experience more accurate ones. I glanced down at Jessie's body. That same voice that had told me that killing her was wrong was screaming at me that it wasn't normal to have thoughts like this while in the same room as her remains. I once again ignored it. I picked up the vial of remembrance and felt my body grow cold. I had used the last of it, and the bottle was now empty. Fuck, I said in panic. Fuck. I got out of the chair and hurried over to the trailer's small shower. I had to go get more, but I knew that I couldn't go outside covered in blood. After grabbing a quick shower, I got out, dried off, and put on clean clothes. Jessie's blood had soaked into my white shoes, and since those were the only pair that I owned, I was forced to fish out a pair of sandals from one of the drawers. Being careful not to step on the body or the red pools around it, I left the trailer and hurried towards the trailer park exit. One of the local dealers lived just a few blocks away. As I dashed up the 3 steps leading to the old house, I felt around in my coat pocket for my wallet. I always kept some emergency money on me, money that I had been careful to hide from Jessie. It wasn't much, but I hoped that it would be enough. I knocked on the door and waited impatiently for a few seconds before it opened, revealing a tall woman with short hair. "What?" the woman demanded shortly. "Yeah, Tracy, it's me, Charlie," I answered. I need to see Doug." "Oh, yeah, hey Charlie. Doug's not here." "Fuck, when will he be back?" "Next Tuesday. He went to Vegas for his cousin's wedding or some shit. You looking to score?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm looking for something really specific." "Come on in." Tracy opened the door wider. "I'm handling things until he gets back." I sighed in relief and went into the house. The door was closed behind me, and I was led into a small living room. Half a dozen people were seated throughout the room, each of them looking like they were stoned out of their minds. "Don't mind them," Tracy told me. "Some of Doug's regulars. They come in, shoot up, and leave a few hours later. They're harmless." "Okay," I said. "Listen, I'm looking for something in particular. I think it's new. It's called Remembrance?" "Remembrance? Never heard of it. Upper, downer, psychedelic, what?" I'm not sure. You take it and your best memories come up." Tracy tapped her lips with her finger. "Doesn't ring a bell, but Doug's got a ton of weird shit stashed away. Tell you what, wait here, and I'll give him a call. You can pay, right?" Yeah, I can pay." "Then give me a minute." She left the room, and I found myself alone with the stoned people. There was nowhere to sit that wasn't already occupied, but I doubted that I could have relaxed anyway. My entire body was shaking. It didn't feel like withdrawal. On a long table in front of one of the customers was an open baggie of cocaine. There was quite a bit of it, and judging by how out of it the guy was, there must have been a lot more to start. He wouldn't have even noticed if I went over and did a quick snort of it. It just didn't seem all that appealing, however. A week, hell, a day, or even maybe a few hours earlier, I would have jumped at the opportunity. But now that I had tried Remembrance, I no longer had a taste for lesser drugs. Next to the cocaine was a razor blade. It was covered in white powder, proof that it had been used to cut lines for snorting. I stared at it for a few seconds before grabbing it and sliding it into my pocket. I wasn't exactly sure why I did so. It was just something that I felt that I had to do. Now that I had the blade, a small bit of my anxiety subsided. I kept my hand in the pocket with it, the metal feeling good against my skin as I rubbed my fingers against it. Tracy came back into the room as she hung up the cell phone she was holding. "Doug says that there's no such thing called remembrance," she said. "Not that he knows of, anyway. He says that maybe it's a nickname a dealer gave it or something. From what you say it does, he thinks it might just be an amphetamine. We've got those." "It isn't fucking Adderall," I replied, more sharply than I intended. Look, this was different. It was like I was actually there. Tracy shrugged. "Sorry, hon, I don't know what to tell you. Are you sure it wasn't some cocktail, maybe? Could have been amphetamine mixed with a psychotropic." I took a deep breath to keep down the irritation that was threatening to overtake me. It wasn't a mix. Look, can I just take a look at what you have to make sure there isn't any? I'll know it if I see it. No can do. That's not how this works. Besides, Doug knows what he's got and what he don't got. Tracy paused. "You don't look so good. Maybe you should lay off for a few days." I couldn't control myself any further. I lunged forward and tackled the woman to the ground. Tracy cried out for just a moment before her head struck the hard floor. Her eyes looked unfocused as she struggled to draw in a breath. Having no intention of letting her recover, I pulled the razor blade out of my pocket and cut a deep laceration across Tracy's long neck. I had never so much as punched another person in my life, but now I had cut the throat of 2 people in one day. As I pushed the blade deeper into the windpipe, I idly wondered why I wasn't horrified by that. I wasn't experiencing revulsion, but I wasn't experiencing satisfaction either. This was simply an action that I was performing, nothing more and nothing less. That sense of indifference stayed with me until the moment Tracy fell still. Once that happened, I was shocked as the feelings I had experienced during my last remembrance trip washed over me. My nerve endings blazed as I was filled with a loving warmth greater than any I'd felt previously. I fell to my knees and cried out with pure joy. In that exact moment, everything was right with the universe for the very first time.